Good evening. I'm Stuart Pittman, Anne Arundel County Executive, and this is Tuesday Night with County Executive Pittman. So our topic tonight is keeping the faith, and it's no secret that it's been a difficult year, and that in our community we're pulling together and we're helping one another in ways that we never have before. And here we are in the holiday season. With a light at the end of the pandemic tunnel, with the vaccinations coming, and at least I can speak for myself, and I hope others on this call agree with me that this is sort of a moment of opportunity and hope, and my hope is that 2021 will be a year of healing. And so I could think of no better group of people to pull together to talk about the year and our feelings about where we've been, where we're headed, and how we as a community can come together than a group of faith leaders. And so we are being joined tonight by Imam Amir from the Islamic Society of Annapolis, Father Austin Murphy from Christ the King Catholic Church in Glen Burnie, Rabbi Rabbi Goldstein from Temple Beth Shalom, Reverend Karen Johnston from First Christian Community Church in Annapolis, and Pastor Drew Schaffner from the Church at Severn Run in Severn. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to ask each of you first to go around and give us a sermon. No, just kidding. Give us about 5 minutes. It might be similar to what you'd say to your congregations, but give us about 5 minutes of your thoughts, connecting your thoughts about where we are as a community with your faith and the faith of your faith tradition, and how that helps you all move forward. And before you do, I get to go first, and I'll be briefer than 5 minutes. It's not political leaders normally don't talk about religion at all, and I have not much myself, but I grew up going to an Episcopalian school where we had chapel every single morning, and religion to me at that age was sort of more of a burden and a set of rules. We like to try to skip chapel. If you arrived at school a little bit late, you could do that. And it was not at that age, in that environment, for me, a spiritual experience. I would say it was more just school. And then when I got a little bit older and I had a daughter, my wife and I decided that we really ought to connect with a community that was spiritual, and I think both I and her felt the need to connect in ways that we hadn't before spiritually. And we joined a Quaker meeting, and I participated in Friends meeting for about 15, probably more than that, years. I was part of a men's group within the Quaker meeting, a small group of men who met regularly for many years, and my own experience is that being together in a group of people in the Quaker tradition, there's not as much said. We sit in silence and we listen, and then people will stand up and speak if they feel that there's a message that they're receiving from God and from whatever their definition of God is. So it's a Christian faith, but the belief is that the word of the Bible is as true as every other word that is spoken, that it all comes from the same source. And I know that has given me a grounded feeling and a feeling of peace at a lot of times in my life. Just that silence and listening has been my faith tradition, and doing it among other people has been part of the key to all of that. So I know each of you do it a little bit differently, and I know that throughout this county there are people who practice various faiths. And in my 2 years as county executive, I've found that a lot of the churches and synagogues and temples all across this county, that the people are really coming together in this pandemic and helping one another and helping people in need of food assistance and all kinds of needs. And it's been a huge asset to government to have these organizations, these institutions at our side. So I appreciate everything you do, and looking forward to hearing from you. And I'll stop talking and let's jump in. We have an order of go here. Let's start with Rabbi Goldstein. Unmute yourself first, as I always forget to. And unless we've had the mute enforced on everybody, you still have that little mute button. There it goes. There it goes.
So sorry, I somehow, and typically I'm the one who has to tell people to unmute themselves. So I don't know what happened there, but thank you for having me, and I'm honored to be here, and I appreciate you thinking about including me in this group. And there are people here on, at least as part of this panel, that I know well, and it's nice to see you all as well. You know, when you talk about county executive, when you talk Executive Pittman, when you talk about the need to feel grounded, and how that, you know, gave you kind of comfort and connection in your experiences. I think that's, you know, regardless of you know, how you worship and what your faith is, I think that sense of needing to feel grounded is something right now that we're all feeling. This has been an enormously trying and challenging time for us. And for so many reasons. You know, if we were just going through the pandemic, just going through COVID, and, you know, we have an expression in Judaism that says dayenu, which means it would be enough. It would be, you know, if it was just that, it would be enough. And so, I mean, and we all know this is, I mean, how trying it's been for us, it's enough. But the fact is that there are so many other things going on which are just add on to what's been going on with all of us, right? We've been in this really nasty political environment, and we still are in this environment to this moment, which only adds to that sense that we just don't feel grounded. We've been, you know, people have struggles, life struggles. People have other health issues that they have been dealing with, which just get ignored and forgotten about because everyone's thinking COVID, right? But you're not thinking about all these other trials, you know, or other issues, family issues that people have, or within your own family or in your extended family. Life changes, the stress or disappointment. I mean, I'm sure that so many of you who share this panel with me will agree. I mean, how many times people have been so disappointed because they've canceled or postponed their weddings, or because they didn't have enough people there they didn't have sufficient of people to give them comfort during a time of mourning, right? So it's been piled on, and we just need so desperately to feel grounded, just like what you're saying. I personally, as a rabbi in a Reform synagogue, now a Reform synagogue is liberal and progressive, but meaning not like politically, but rather it means that we're not orthodox to the point where we go by every single the letter of every single law, but rather we see Judaism as more of a treasure trove of things we can embrace or choose not to. But so for me, faith is not about the faith that right now that I'm having in God, that will somehow help me through this, or give me strength, or ground me during this time. But rather, faith is really about my faith in community, my faith in my community here at the synagogue, my faith in the community, the larger community of Anne Arundel County and even beyond. That's the faith that I really feel so strongly, the one that is about the other people around me who are going through these same issues with me, who are helping me along the way. And I think, and who accept the help that I will give them along the way too. And I think that well, I can't speak for every single person in my congregation, but I think that, you know, that message probably resonates with a lot of people in my congregation. We're looking for others, you know, in this time of separation, we're still looking for others who can kind of share in what we're going through and help us in those difficult moments. You know, there's that famous expression, which is that shared joy is doubled and shared pain is halved. And I think that really in these moments, I truly believe that to be the case. And so um, I guess I'm here to say that, you know, that, that our synagogue tries so deeply and so hard to be that source of grounding and comfort to people during these times, and to anybody truly. But, you know, but as human beings, you know, I think part of the secret is also to recognize that I too need a sense of grounding and a sense of comfort and a sense of connection and community to help me through these dark times. So thanks.
Thank you, and thank for everything that you've been doing in the community and that your members have as well. Let's move on to Imam Amir from the Islamic Society of Annapolis. Thank you for being with us, Imam.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be with you all tonight and to just share a few words about our county and about how things are going in this special time of year. So for our community, one of the things that I reflected on and discussed with them is that, you know, this is a time where, especially because of the effects of the COVID virus, we see that, you know, people, a lot of times their discussions are associated or revolve around sickness and death. And those are things that we have to address, you know, obviously as a community. But as a faith-based community, we have to remember that our faith is actually teaching us not just about, of course, death and the afterlife and moving on, but it also, there's a tremendous emphasis on living. You know, so it's not just like many Muslims and I'm sure in other faiths they have certain rituals that are performed for the dying and for the deceased, and people many times they ask me, especially this time of year and how things are going about these rituals and what should happen in this situation. But I think it's important, as I said, for our faith-based community to always or consistently focus on and remind ourselves that our faith is teaching us the art of living, right? Not just sort of the way that we pass on and we leave. And when we focus on the art of living, one of the most significant aspects of that is being a person who's optimistic, being a person who is hopeful, and not just being hopeful and optimistic, but then creating that hope and optimism in others around you. And I think that's really, really important for all of us as leaders to again demonstrate this sort of positive attitude, but then sort of bring that out in others. So that's just a sort of a brief reminder for, of course, not only our community, but our community for Anne Arundel County, that we, especially when we're faced with these types of trials and struggles, that we have a sense of optimism. Just the last thing that I'll say, there is a tradition where we're reminded that basically hope is one of the wings of a bird. Like you can imagine that a bird flying to its destination, and one of those wings is the wing of hope. The other one is of course God consciousness, but this wing of hope, imagine a bird flying. If you don't have that hope in your life, then the bird is not going to reach its destination. It's not even going to be able to fly. And that's how important having hope and optimism is in a person's life, that to be able to reach the goal of success, not only in this world, but in the hereafter, you have to have that hope. So I want to thank our county exec for giving me the opportunity to share these few thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Imam. And I just have to comment on the sense of community within within your faith community. I've been to Ramadan a couple of times and eaten with you and immediately felt welcome and by everybody there. And I think that's what all of these faiths do. Been to a number of your churches and synagogue and just feel welcome the minute you walk in the door. And I think that's part of the point. So let's move on to Pastor Karen Johnson and from First Christian Community Church. I've gotten to know Pastor Johnson a little bit through her work in the community with Arundel Connecting Together and other efforts, and big admirer. You won't get a chance here to really preach like I know you can, but this woman can preach. So tell us your thoughts, Karen.
Hi, good evening again, and thank you again for those kind words. I'll send you a check for putting those kind words. Yeah, I mean, with everything that has been said so far, are some of the same things that we've been stressing within our congregation. When you just look at not only where we are with the pandemic, but prior to the pandemic, you know, now we can say way back in 2019, when back in the day is now 2019, but when we look back over the challenge even prior to the pandemic, and now that we are in the, you know, I just wanted to stress what we do stress in the congregation is to, as Amon had already spoken, it is hope. It's you want to maintain hope in the midst of despair, if you will. You know, we are 400-year of racial reckoning. We're in the midst of an election process that has just been one for just totally unbelievable. And so it can come to the point where people of faith can struggle with hope, can struggle with, you know, where is this taking us, and how do we get past that? And so in sharing with our congregation, it's always talking to that issue. And I usually go back or lean back on one of the Psalms from Psalm 121. And that's when David was speaking, and he said, I look to the hills from whence cometh my help, and that my help comes from the Lord. And when I think about that particular passage, I think about, you know, what did David really mean when he said that he was looking to the hills? You know, what was his underlying thoughts, if you will, in that? And I believe that when David spoke that, he probably was recalling, if you will, the struggles that he went through when he was running from Saul and the changes that he had. I'm sure he felt the grief that he experienced during those days before he actually took the throne. And so I think when he spoke those words, he could possibly have thinking those thoughts, and then remembering that even though he had gone through those difficult and challenging days, he could remember that, okay, I got through them because of my faith and my hope. And his hope was not in himself, but his hope was in his belief in God. And so speaking from the tenets of our faith, that the only way we're going to get through this and to be grounded, is to have faith and hope in something bigger than who you are. And so in stressing that means that even though when things seem hopeless, it may seem hopeless, but I still have something greater than who I am that can bring us through these difficult times. And that's something that we have to hold on to, because without it, what happens to us? And without it, we begin to flounder, and we get lost, and we become divisive when you start losing hope. And so I think in this time, again, I'm in full agreement with what's been said so far, that one thing the faith community has to continue to stress and to demonstrate that even in despair, there is still hope, and for us to model what that looks like. And what that looks like is trying to bring the community together, regardless of race, color, or creed, or political affiliation. It looks like looking at each other and finding what we have in common as opposed to what we don't have in common. And I believe that is one of the main functions that we have as the community of faith, is to not so busy of looking about what makes us so much different, but what is it that brings us to a place where we have in common. And one thing that we have in common now is this pandemic. And the thing is how do we get through it? And the only way we're going to get through it and come out on the other side, we have to come together to do it. And that can be done. And I think the faith community, we have to be at the forefront of that and demonstrating it and articulating that. And so that the community can see where we are, as diverse as we are on this screen, that coming from different faiths and beliefs, we still can come together and model. This is how community really operates. It operates by coming together and looking to and not so much looking, what can I get out of the deal, but looking at it from the other person's perspective. What is it that will make life better for you? And in turn, as you're looking to me, what is it will make life better for Karen? And so I think when we start looking in that way and being selfless instead of being selfish, we can make it to the other side and be better for it.
Amen. Yeah, when we all think we're the center of the universe, each one of us, it doesn't really work very well, does it? And that's what's great about having various different religions on this call, is that I know that when a group like this gets together and talks to one another without some politician in the middle of it, I know what you end up doing is realizing how much all the world religions have in common. People, they don't always agree on everything, but there's a very common core among all of them, and that's what we're all looking for, and that's what we all need. So next, let's have Pastor Drew Schaffner of Severn Run Church, which I understand is one of the largest congregations in this county, a very large church, and you must produce good folks, because James Kitchen, who works and runs our community engagement and constituent service office, and helped put this group together, was raised in your church. So well done. Thank you for that.
He's the Jim, and it's an honor to be here, Executive Pittman. It's an honor to be with all of you all, to share a few minutes together. And the analogy to me to describe kind of what the feeling has been for many of our people has been, so imagine you had to dive into a pool and you just thought you were going to be under for 20 seconds. And so you took a breath, but just thought you were going to be under a little bit. And then when you're in the water, suddenly you find out you've got to be under another 60 seconds. And I feel like when we started the pandemic, that's kind of where people were, right? And there's just been kind of an accumulation of losses along the way. I mean, we started with the opioid crisis, right? I mean, that hasn't gone away. And so one of my favorite books is a book by a very brilliant but simply clear fellow named Bob Goff, and it's called Love Does. And it's the simple idea that love is always activist. You cannot love without doing something. And so one of the things that we've tried to do, I get to be privileged to pastor a multicultural church, and it's a very humbling experience. And we've tried to translate our faith into action in small ways. And with the opioid crisis, it just so often, it's like us as a church, not anybody else, but we're wringing our hands about it. What are we going to do about it? So we we started a recovery house, but our recovery houses are empty ish. People are not in recovery. And talking with a friend in Baltimore, 5 of them of the ones he's familiar with are closed down. And so, today I did a small wedding in the building, the young military couple. And how crazy is it to do a wedding where the bride and groom have to wear masks facing each other and they can only take off their masks to kiss the bride? It's like, that's a small loss, but I'm just saying there are so many accumulating losses and deficits building up in our community that I don't think there's ever been a time where we get to make more of a difference than we do now. And so that's simply what we're trying to do, is trying to find ways to be love in an activist way, to sort of address the cultural trauma that we've been through, the serial, revelations of racial injustices that we went through. It's like, oh my gosh, on top of everything else. But what an opportunity now to start a conversation we don't let die, right? What an opportunity to say, we're not gonna let those conversations pass into the next tragedy. And so, ironically, in the midst of all of these losses, there's also opportunities, and to try to, in some small way, demonstrate a value-laden love. Politically, I'm astonished at how people hate one another across the aisles. Not everybody, of course, but I'm just saying there's been a radicalization of our parties that is just hateful. And man, we don't stand for that. Doesn't mean I've succeeded in changing everybody's mind at all, but that matches none of our faiths. It's un-American, it's un-everything, and yet this is the other virus that we're dealing with. But again, all that's not hopeless to me. I think this is a great time of opportunity for us to let the light shine. One of the passages that has sort of been guiding us during this time is Isaiah 60, 1 and 2. And it says, "Arise and shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you." And it's the idea that, the second verse says, darkness covers the face of the earth. And it's, well, okay, in the midst of this incredible social and, time of gathering losses and the darkness, we get to be practical lights. And I continue to be surprised at the needs. The food bank needs are incredible. We tried to start off joining with people in the community to help, and kept thinking, well, the food bank's going to kind of wind down, right? And that it has just grown tremendously. But what has been so neat is to see the number of people stepping up. We have people who come through the food bank line and then come and serve. Have people from the community who just see that there's something going on and say, hey, can we help? It's like, of course you can. So all of that to say simply that I think that it's important for us as faith leaders to grieve our losses and yet see the opportunities and highlight the hope that we have, and demonstrate love in any practical way that we can in our community. And so that's what we're trying to do. And it's traumatic to not see people for extended lengths of time. So, okay, we can pick up the phone and drop things by people's houses. But, I refuse to be pessimistic in light, of all of the hardships that are accumulating and the losses that are accumulating, and just believe that we can make an incredible difference if we will find practical ways to love and model, model the light that's our faith. So thank you guys for the opportunity just to gather. Executive Pittman, thank you for taking the time to put some light on the in the community and on public access, and there's a lot of other things you could be focusing on, but I really don't think in terms of human need there's anything more important at the core. So thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate you being brave enough to raise the political issues and the political divisions as well. We're so scared of the topic that sometimes we won't even talk about it, and I agree with everything that you said. Um, so let's jump on to the last of this group before we get a little bit deeper into all of this, and that's Father Austin Murphy from Christ the King Church in Glen Burnie. Yeah, and I know you've worked in Baltimore City as well, and you also have a very diverse congregation. So, love to hear your thoughts, Father.
Well, thank you very much. It's the imam and the rabbi and the ministers have all taken faith, hope, and love from me. So I'm not sure what else I could add to this. But as we were reflecting on this just briefly here, I thought about that when the pandemic when we were coming back out of sequestration after the quarantine in the spring, we were preparing the church for a properly social distanced experience for people. And you go to the supermarkets or the other places where they had those dots on the floor and those sort of markers that told you that was separated. As churches, we typically don't have the budgets to put up that kind of sexy, flashy stuff. So we had these nice thick pieces of tape that we laid down on the floor down our central aisle. And on each one of them, we wrote a little bit from that famous passage from 1 Corinthians 13, when we were saying that love is patient, and then in 6 feet, love is kind, and then in 6 feet, love doesn't hold grudges, that sort of thing. We had them in English and Spanish because of the diversity of our community. But that really struck me as something to pray about, just to come back to kind of the basics, which is what the pandemic has, I think, for a lot of us done. What is it that basically and essentially our faith, our shared faith, offers to us to give us that strength, that hope, that groundedness that we all crave. And it's not tied up in any sort of dogma or doctrine that divides us from each other. I think it really brings us back to the basics of, for us as Christians, the gospel, that idea of faith and hope and love, which is particularly expressed as charity, which is not only a love, which is a feeling towards someone else that as you said, Pastor Johnson, I want your good. I want what is good for you as I pray you want what is good for me. That's that kind of charity. But that charity, it's not just a feeling. It's not just something we say to each other. It's something that comes out into action. And one of the things that I was really touched by from our congregation, and I'm sure you all experienced this as well, there were people who just couldn't sit at home still. Well, they could sit at home, but they couldn't sit still. And they thought, how can we be of help? How can we be of service? What is it that we can do? And I really think that they were conditioned to be that way as people of faith. It was that they knew that, okay, fine, I can't go to church. I can't do the regular Sunday routine that I want to do. So what is the next best thing? So of course we all learned how to live stream on Zoom and YouTube, and I hope we all did. And we provided some kind of substitute for in-person worship, and I think we're all getting a lot better at it. And I hope that we don't have to get any more better at it. I just hope that we can eventually return to that in-person, face-to-face worship where everybody who wants to be here can be, and because that's also important and formative. But the people, and I know my folks did the same thing. They said, what are things that we can do? And they began by asking, who are our elderly parishioners who are probably home alone and in some ways even unable just to go out to the store to do their own shopping and that sort of thing. So we had people mobilized they took phone trees and lists of parishioners and just made phone calls and said, I'm calling on behalf of the parish. How are you doing? Are you all right? Do you want to say a prayer together? Do you need anything? Can I stop? Can I go to the grocery store and drop something off at your home? And it was moving to see people really step up to that. And you would hope that that would be who we are all the time. And I do think that that feeling, that love that people have in their heart is there all the time. It certainly got drawn out of us by this pandemic, which is, I think, some of those blessings of the pandemic. I think we'll have to maybe get together again at some point and compare our notes together as leaders of faith. What were these blessings in the pandemic that we found? But there were those, and then there's so many people. Again, we have a lot of Hispanic parishioners. Over 60% of my parish is Hispanic up here, and that community in particular, as you may know, got hit very hard with the pandemic as well, and they wanted to find ways to reach out. We had a lot of people who own businesses, supermarkets and restaurants. They got their distributors to donate food, and we had a distribution of, well, we were told we had 400 parcels to give out for people. It ended up becoming 520 or something like that. So it was some kind of multiplication happened when we did it. We did that once and then we did it again. It was almost 1,000. So we've been blessed to be able to do those sorts of things that people of faith, when they come together, are able to accomplish. And we don't think that's an accident. We don't think that that's a coincidence that happens. And we believe that God is in the midst of this pandemic, that God is making things happen, and honestly calling us back to those essentials, those simple essentials, that faith, that hope, and that charity that just make us who we are as people of faith. So I without belaboring the point, I think that's really where we've come to this point, that maybe I don't get to go to the Christmas Mass that I would always go to, either because I can't get out or because it's going to be at capacity and we got to find another place to go. But what is essential, that we gather together here in this dark time to celebrate the birth of hope, in the coming of Christ, which is what we celebrate. So I hope that can be something that we all take away from this, that we see in the midst of this, that people can really find a grounding in that faith that they've carried with them for so long, that they carried it for a reason, and that it certainly has an effect in their life. And just one other thing that I would say to my fellow pastors and leaders, I want to, on behalf of your people, I will thank you, because if you're like me, you've gotten a lot of complaints about why we can't do this, that, or the other, because of all the regulations that we've been under. You really do get tired of telling people no, even though it's for a very, very good reason, and it's really out of charity and love for them. Keep up the faith too. Stay strong and know that you're not alone in the midst of that too. So, thanks.
Yeah, you all have it as tough as everybody else. And when you mentioned, Father, the phone calls that your congregation has been making to one another, the checkup calls, it made me think about the phone calls that our Department of Aging has been making to people who normally come into senior centers, and how important that's been, and just the check-in. But I wanted to ask a question to all of you, which is just, you've all been through the same initially stay-at-home order, and then some gradual reopening, and a series of regulations that you've been under. But just how your jobs have changed, and how that's changed, relationships within your congregation and with you, and maybe an example or two of things that you've done during this pandemic that you had never done before, like the calls. Why don't we go with the same order? Rabbi, you first. And once again, the mute button.
I'm unmuted. All right. So, there's, I wanted to just share another thought before, I know that we're short on time, but I feel like, that one of the things that I'm aware of when we talk about faith is it's a very individual experience. A person's faith is unique to themselves. And, I feel right now at this time, in this environment that we're in which it's so easy for people to say such nasty things about other people, that thinking about just yourself, thinking about what's in your best interest, and thinking about what is, that faith, which is your individual, unique experience. I think that while it might be helpful for you, I think what we are all crying out for is to have a joint experience, one in which we're all acknowledging that we're all humans in the same boat together, and we're all struggling with this together. And it's not an individual thing, but rather we really need to stop seeing others as our adversaries, and stop seeing others as trying to get us, and stop seeing others as intentionally trying to harm another person, but rather seeing each other as human beings, just trying to make our way through this world together. And I feel as if and it's my hope that what comes out of this miserable year and this miserable experience is that we all start to kind of soften to each other a little bit more, and not see our own individual needs as primary, but start to see other people's needs as primary, and stop seeing things as what's in my best interest, what's in our best interest. And if so, I think that we really can be chipping away, not just at this year 2020 and this pandemic, but also kind of the greater misery that we're kind of experiencing right now.
Okay. And Imam, what have you seen different, and have you all adapted to all of these changes?
Yeah, this is maybe something that maybe not everybody wants to hear, but even as sort of like a religious leader, I find that people are and so many people have financial constraints and limitations in the community, and many of them are shy about addressing that or bringing that out, and I find myself for better or worse trying to address some of the financial challenges that our community or some of our community members have, and again, part of that challenge is just even a lack of awareness that the community in general has, that not everyone is able to work virtually, not everyone is able to have sort of their job situation, job taskings altered. So this has really been a difficult task, because part of it is actually connecting people amongst people, part of it is fundraising, part of it is so there's a really and then also even just discovering and learning about the families and what's going on in their in their homes and their jobs. So this is a very sort of a daunting task, and I'm sure many of you have had to deal with it. Just we're trying to day by day when it comes to this particular issue. But I did hear that there is going to be obviously some reprieve coming from the federal government again. So that's something positive. So thank you, County Exec.
Yes. Same question, Pastor Johnson.
Yes. For us, this pandemic has really allowed us for something. First of all, I do have a rather large congregation, but they have adapted very well to virtual worship. Even when the numbers were increased as far as how many people we could have in service, we still remained virtual, because it was important for us to make sure that, with my congregation is 100% African American. And so with that, there's certain underlying health issues and so forth that I have to be very conscious about. And so we just kept our congregation virtual, our services virtual, and it worked very well. Our members, I should say partners, because that's what we call them, partners, were very understanding. And there wasn't any challenge or any pushback. It's, this is what needs to be done in order for us to come together and keep everyone safe. It's for us to stay apart and just stay online, then that's what we'll do. And so I've been very blessed with that type of cooperation. But one thing about this pandemic and being in a shutdown, it's really, even though the church door is closed, it has opened the church up more because it allows us to rethink ministry. It's almost like the slate was wiped clean, and now we have to rethink ministry, and we have to rethink it in a way that's so different because we're now removing this physical capacity, if you will. So how do I still serve the community? How do I still worship? How does the church still be the church? And how the church, because the church is in this moment, it has taken us back to the basics, which has been stated. We've gone back to the basics, almost in certain ways, like back to the early church, the New Testament church, where you were a house church. And so that's what we have now. You are in the sanctuary of your home. It's getting back to the basic of who we are as believers, and to understand that some of the things that we had in place, the music and the choir, the lights and all of this, is that really essential for worship? And what we're finding, of course, is that it's not, because it's from the heart. But it has opened us up to really rethink ministry. And even with the bill itself, we're trying to find ways of how we can still serve the community. And so since one of our meeting rooms we're not meeting, so what can I do with that space? And so we just opened up a food pantry. Let's take the space and put it to some good use and open up a food pantry to help serve the community. So with this pandemic and forcing us to really think differently, again, to me, the church is becoming more of what the church is supposed to be.
I got two follow-up questions, if I could jump in. One is, how, in a virtual service versus an in-person service outside the pandemic, how do the numbers compare? And the other is, how's the money compare in terms of tithing and contributions?
For us, we were fortunate. Our giving has not decreased. In fact, in many ways, it's increased. As far as the attendance is concerned, we're seeing more online. We are connecting with parishioners who had moved out of state, and now they're just coming back online because we weren't online at first. We didn't have virtual worship at first. And from this pandemic, now, once the church that we're back open again, once everything is done and we can come back together, we will remain online. That will just be part of our ministry. So it has helped us. It has helped us to, as far as outreach is concerned, it has helped us as far as finances are concerned. So we've been very blessed with this.
That's good news. Great, excellent. Yeah, I can see why you haven't changed for now. So, Pastor Drew, what's your experience been with all these changes?
We similarly, we did not gather for 7 months, and we have a lot of people near the Fort Meade community who, especially early and mid on, were under a lot of restrictions in terms of their abilities, and so I would say, again, it has been daunting. And to answer your question too, online, we really have worked hard to try to figure out, to whom are we still connected, and have some fairly sophisticated ways to do that. And online has held, and it too is a valuable tool to reach many, many people. But there's a bit of a drift in terms of when you're not able to have a personal conversation with somebody over a number of weeks and months. I was out on the bike path and ran into a good friend, and they simply indicated, it's because I just was talking, it's been a couple of weeks. It's the rhythms of life have been disrupted. So we're working to try to counter that in as safe and practical ways as we can. Giving wise, it's been a bit of a challenge. I'm grateful for how our people have done. We have chosen to run a deficit in order to kind of be able to do our food bank and things like that. I mean, hey, I get to live by faith too. and one of the things that I think is driving so much of our culture is just fear. There's the political fear, fear is just everywhere in this. And so what we didn't want to do is we're not going to guilt anybody into physical attendance. For about the last 10 years, we've never called our building the church. I think, for us, that's terrible theology. It's like the church is people. It's not a building. So we never have called it that. And so people kind of had that idea in mind that they are still this body without this building. And so, we've tried to, to adapt and to, one of the things about the creativity of God is that the solution is usually in the problem. Like with the vaccine, where are we looking for the answer to this terrible virus? Well, it's in the, it's in the virus. That's where we look for the solution, is in the problem. And so, we again, in my 42 years, this has been one of the biggest challenges ever. Just being honest, I mean, it's just been incredibly challenging to have people die and not be able to do funerals. There's losses in that, right? I mean, we didn't get to grieve our friend in a way, and we're going to have a lot of funerals stacked up. So. I guess what I'm saying is we're trying very much to look for the solutions and the problems and do something creatively in response, believing that there's an appropriate response. Real quick conclusion: our student pastor is a wonderful young genius, and so I said, we're not going to try to, quote, religiously guilt people into attendance. Like, it's not safe for many people to come. It's just not. My own wife has a compromised immune system. She can't be around other people. Many in our African-American population have justifiable sensitivity to, because there's a disproportionate impact with COVID. Well, I'm not going to use my position as a religious leader to say, if you had faith, you'd just come. That's abusive in my mind. So what can we do to connect with people and to, and just because I can't do everything, what's the something I can do? So just as one we're trying to innovate any way we can. And our student pastor saw the popularity of all the subscription boxes, whether it's Stitch Fix or food boxes, all those things that people are ordering now. And so with our students, especially for the time that there was no gathering, he began a subscription box monthly service of taking a box that would contain lessons and fun things, but it was a chance to deliver. To go to somebody's home and say, "Hey, you are not forgotten. You matter, and here's something for you." And started off with just a few, and is delivering, I don't know, 100, 120 now, and so trying to not be stopped and not to find excuses for saying we can't. But it has been the greatest challenge to innovate and to lead through, and and again, we're not done. We have a ways to go, don't we?
Absolutely. And what's your experience? How have things changed for you, Father Murphy?
Well, like the other pastors, I found becoming a virtual parish, and being able to present Mass and various other offerings via either Facebook or the internet on the website has been great. It's something that I think it's a direction that we should have been going in the first place. So that's not going to stop afterwards. But one of the things that I found was really a call back to our purpose as a parish was the focus, as Pastor Johnson said, on the home, on the church in the home, the domestic church, as we call it, where we look at the role of the parents and the family as the essential unit, not just the essential unit of society, but the essential unit of faith, where faith is passed on to our children. And I don't know what the experience is in our other congregations, but we've kind of dropped the ball, at least in our church, on equipping the parenting generation to be able to talk to their children about faith, celebrate their faith, and actually activate their faith in their home. So we really were called back to that. And I'm actually proud of that. I'm really excited. I told people that this would be a wasted opportunity in this pandemic. We would have wasted the pandemic if our families don't have a place where they can gather to pray at home. It would be a waste if we didn't have conversations about what they believe, what is important to them, what their values are as individuals, if we didn't do that. So
I'm going to interrupt you quickly. I know Rabbi Goldstein has a 7 o'clock teaching engagement that he's going to jump off for. So any final words, Rabbi? All right. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
All right. Sorry, Father Murphy, you can just jump.
I know we're short on time. So, but definitely the connection between the gathering, the full assembly of the church, which is limited at this point, and the point of the church, that is to bring that contact of faith to individuals. That's not one or the other, it's both. And that there's the communal aspect of our faith, certainly, and there's the individual aspect, the effect that it has on the character of each person. And people, honestly, I think our young people definitely need their parents to parent them in all sorts of ways. They need to teach them about right and wrong and all that sort of thing, but also about what they believe, what they value most in life, and how that can be lived and modeled. And I really would love my families, all my families, to be able to say, I'm proud of the way mom or dad have shown us how to live as human beings in this world. We certainly have seen how not to live as human beings in this world, and this year has also shown us that, unfortunately. But hopefully we all of us together have been some kind of a point of light in the midst of all this darkness.
Yes. So Imam also has a 7 o'clock engagement and has to jump off. You are holding me. You all are holding me to a schedule here. I'm not used to this, but thank you for joining us, Imam, and we'll let you get to your 7 p.m. I don't know if any of the rest of you do, but we probably should wrap it up. I do want to say that we've had just a couple questions come in from people. There were really more questions for me than you. One is did we consult with religious leaders at the beginning of the pandemic? And that's a really good question, because I actually think that it's really useful to consult with our faith leaders. And we have an executive order that just went out. We're going to reestablish an interfaith advisory committee to advise me, advise our whole administration on policy. We've got applications in from, I think, 20 some. It's supposed to be a 17-person body. It'll be very diverse, and I'm looking forward to getting that group together. We did have one meeting of about 60 faith leaders early on when the reopening process was happening, and there were questions about 50%, 25%, what people can handle and are likely to do, and that was really useful. But I can tell you that as a county executive, I really I get a lot out of listening to people of faith, and the advice is really good advice, and so I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to that group coming together. The other thing I always do is when I have a meeting with a group of faith leaders, I always ask for a prayer at some point. It's not a government-like kind of thing to do, but let's see, whoever raises their hand first, can you close us with a prayer? They're all being shy.
Everybody's being humble. Pastor Johnson, you were
Whoever's inspired. It's just like
That's it.
Quaker meeting. You just sit there in silence until somebody speaks up.
she
All
was
right, Pastor
outnumbered,
Johnson,
so,
great.
in terms of gender, so I think she should lead us.
Okay, great.
All right, let us pray. God, our Creator, as we have gathered here on this evening to speak about faith and to speak about the things that are happening within this world, although we speak, we know that you are fully aware of everything that is happening, all of the challenges that we are experiencing. So we just want to thank you, Creator, for your presence. We just ask that you continue to guide us, that you continue to strengthen us to be the beacon of light within our communities, that your love will shine through us as we continue to serve the people that you have given us responsibility to steward and to shepherd. We seek your guidance, we seek your direction. There are times when we are uncertain, we ask for your wisdom and we ask for your strength as we continue to spread your hope, especially within this season as we're looking for this coming. And so God, we just want to thank you again. I just pray because as we are called to pray for our political leaders, we just pray that you would continue to instill wisdom into our county exec, to guide him and direct him and his entire staff as they lead us through this difficult time. So again, we thank you for your presence. We thank you for who you are. And it's in your name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you all. Bless you and happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You as well. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.